"Keep your mouth shut," the fiancé warned the maid's toddler. Then the billionaire heard everything. At first, everyone laughed at her. Then the room went completely silent. 3-year-old little girl. Tiny hands. Big brown eyes. She didn't understand power or money or secrets. She only understood one thing, the truth. And on one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, inside a mansion worth more than most people could ever dream of, this little toddler opened her mouth and said 4 words that shattered an entire life built on lies. 4 words. That's all it took. And the 32-year-old billionaire who thought he had everything figured out stood completely frozen, because what he just heard changed everything. Welcome back, beautiful people. If this is your first time here, you are in exactly the right place. We tell real, raw, emotional human stories that will make you laugh, cry, and believe in something bigger than yourself again. Before we dive into today's story, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now get comfortable, because what you're about to hear is one of those stories you'll still be thinking about 3 days from now. It involves a billionaire, his soon-to-be bride, a quiet, hard-working maid, and her 3-year-old daughter who had no idea she was about to blow up an entire carefully constructed lie. Let's begin. She was just the maid. Nobody ever really looked at her, until the day everything changed. Her name was Rosa Medina. 34 years old, originally from San Antonio, Texas, though she'd been living in Chicago for the past 6 years. She was the kind of woman who moved quietly through rooms. Careful, efficient, invisible. That was how she survived. That was how she kept her job. She cleaned the Harmon estate 5 days a week, arriving at 7 in the morning and leaving by 4 in the afternoon, always with her daughter Lily in tow because daycare was expensive, and Mr. Harmon, the billionaire, had told her once, casually, that he didn't mind the little one as long as she stayed out of trouble. Ethan Harmon was 32, self-made. The kind of man whose name appeared in Forbes before he was 30. He'd built his fortune in logistics and technology, and his estate in the northern suburbs of Chicago was the physical proof of every late night and every sacrifice he'd ever made. 8 bedrooms, a private gym, a pool that looked like something from a resort in Bali. It was beautiful, cold in a certain way, like a museum, full of expensive things but somehow missing something warm and human at the center of it. Rosa had worked there for 2 years. She knew the rhythm of the house better than most people knew their own apartments. She knew which drawer in the kitchen stuck, which hallway light flickered every 3rd day, which window in the master bedroom had a draft that Mr. Harmon never fixed because he said he liked the fresh air. She knew things. Quiet things. The kind of things you notice when you spend enough hours inside a place that isn't yours. And then there was Vanessa. Vanessa Cole was 29, stunning, and recently engaged to Ethan after a whirlwind 8-month relationship. She was the kind of beautiful that made a room shift when she walked in. Tall, polished, always dressed like she was expecting a photographer to appear around the corner. She came from money too, though her families had been slowly draining for a decade. Something Rosa had pieced together from overheard conversations and the way Vanessa sometimes stared at the rooms in the estate with an expression that wasn't love. It was calculation. Rosa hadn't judged her for it. Who was she to judge? She cleaned other people's houses for a living. She had her own problems, her own story. But she had noticed things. Small things at first. Vanessa canceling plans with Ethan and claiming she was at her mother's, when Rosa had once seen her mother's name light up on Vanessa's phone as a missed call during those exact same hours. A number she'd seen saved under a different name. Not her mother. Texting frequently late at night. A whispered conversation in the back hallway that stopped the moment Rosa appeared around the corner with a mop. Rosa told herself it wasn't her business. She needed this job. Lily needed stability. Her daughter was 3 years old and already too smart for her own good. The kind of little girl who repeated everything, absorbed everything, and asked questions that made adults look at each other with wide eyes. Rosa loved that about her daughter. She also sometimes quietly feared it. And then one afternoon in early March, something happened that Rosa hadn't planned for. She was vacuuming the upstairs hallway when she heard voices coming from the master bedroom, the door slightly ajar. Vanessa was on the phone. Rosa wasn't trying to listen. She turned the vacuum off to move it around the corner, and in that brief silence, she heard it. "He doesn't know anything. He's not going to find out. Just be patient. After the wedding, everything changes." Rosa stood very still. She heard Vanessa laugh softly, an intimate laugh, the kind not meant for a friend or a family member. Then, "I love you too." Rosa backed away quietly, heart pounding, hands cold. What would you do if you were standing right where Rosa was standing at that exact moment? She said nothing that day. Or the next. She went home, held Lily close, and told herself that some things were not her responsibility to carry. But Lily had been in that hallway too. And Lily had heard the whole thing. Sometimes the most dangerous truth in a room isn't the one the adults are hiding. It's the one a child is about to speak out loud. 3-year-olds don't understand secrets. They don't understand consequences or social dynamics, or the concept of staying in your lane. They understand what they see, what they hear, and what feels important to repeat. Lily Medina was particularly gifted in this department. She had her mother's eyes, wide, observant, taking in everything, and she had a memory that was almost unsettling in its sharpness for someone her age. In the days that followed, Rosa watched Lily carefully. The little girl went about her days in the estate the way she always did, coloring in her little corner of the kitchen, watching cartoons on Rosa's phone during breaks, occasionally wandering the halls with the quiet confidence of a child who had never been told she didn't belong somewhere. Ethan had always been kind to Lily. He'd once spent 20 minutes fixing a broken crayon with tape because Lily had cried about it, and Rosa had watched him do it with a kind of patience she hadn't expected from a man who ran a billion-dollar company. She thought about that a lot in those days. She thought about how Ethan was a good man. Not just powerful good. The kind of good that was rare in circles like his. He was fair with Rosa, remembered her name, asked about Lily by name, paid her well above market rate, and once, when Rosa's car broke down in December, had quietly arranged for a repair without being asked and told her not to worry about the bill. Rosa hadn't cried in front of him. She'd cried in her car on the way home. She did not want to be the woman who destroyed his upcoming wedding. She did not want to be the maid who started drama in the house of the man who had shown her nothing but decency. She stayed silent. But the universe, it seemed, had its own timeline. 2 weeks after Rosa had heard that phone call, Ethan came home early from a business trip. He'd been in New York for 3 days, closing a deal that had been in the works for 6 months, and he'd called Vanessa from the airport to surprise her. She hadn't answered. He'd assumed she was napping or at a salon appointment, and he'd been so happy about the deal that he'd picked up a small bouquet of sunflowers from a vendor outside O'Hare, Vanessa's favorite, and driven home with the windows down despite the March chill. Rosa was in the kitchen when she heard the front door open. She looked at the clock, just past 2 in the afternoon. She felt something sink in her stomach. Lily looked up from her coloring book. "Mr. Ethan," she said brightly, climbing off her chair. He came into the kitchen smiling, that easy, genuine smile that Rosa had decided made him look younger than 32, and he crouched down to Lily's level immediately. "Hey, little bug," he said. "How are you doing today?" Lily tilted her head. "Miss Vanessa was crying," she announced. Ethan blinked. "She was. Stairs." With the door closed. Lily picked up a red crayon and studied it. She said bad words. Ethan stood slowly, smile fading just slightly. "Is she still up there?" Rosa had gone very still by the sink. "No," Lily said. "She left in a big car. A man was driving." The silence stretched for just a moment, the kind of silence that feels like a held breath. Do you think Rosa should have said something at this point? What would you have done? Ethan looked at Rosa then. Just looked at her. And Rosa realized in that moment that her face had given too much away, because she was not a woman built for pretending, and she had been carrying this weight for 2 weeks. "Rosa," he said quietly, "is there something you want to tell me?" She had 2 seconds to choose between her job and his heart. What she chose in those 2 seconds, nobody in that house expected. Rosa set down the dish towel. Slowly, deliberately, she turned to face Ethan fully. She had played this moment in her head 100 times over the past 2 weeks. The what-ifs, the consequences, the fears. What if he didn't believe her? What if Vanessa turned it around, made Rosa the problem, got her fired? What if she lost this job, the one steady thing in her and Lily's life, because she opened her mouth about something she'd heard through a half-open door? But Ethan was looking at her with those honest eyes. And Lily was right there. And Rosa thought suddenly of her daughter's voice, clear and fearless and unbothered by consequence. Miss Vanessa was crying. Children don't calculate. They just tell the truth. Rosa took a breath. "About 2 weeks ago," she began, "I was vacuuming the upstairs hall. The bedroom door was open a little. I didn't mean to hear anything. But I heard Miss Vanessa on the phone." "He stopped," she said. She said he didn't know anything. That after the wedding, everything changes. Rosa paused. And she told whoever was on the phone that she loved them. The kitchen was so quiet Rosa could hear the refrigerator hum. Ethan didn't move. He was standing with the sunflowers still in his hand, yellow petals bright and ridiculous against the weight of the moment, and he was looking at a spot on the floor somewhere between Rosa and the window. "How long ago?" he said. 2 weeks. "I'm sorry I didn't." 2 weeks. He said it again. Not angry, just processing. Lily, who had been coloring quietly, looked up at the tone of the room and felt something shift. She looked at Ethan, then at her mother, then back at Ethan. "Are you sad?" she asked him. He looked at her, and something in his face, that careful, controlled composure, cracked just slightly at the edges. "I don't know yet, little bug," he said honestly. Lily nodded solemnly, as if that was a perfectly acceptable answer. Then she got up, walked across the kitchen, and put her small hand on his knee. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, 3 years old, offering the only thing she had to give. And Ethan Harmon, 32 years old, net worth somewhere north of $800 million, a man who had negotiated with governments and CEOs without blinking, looked down at this small child's hand on his knee and pressed his lips together hard. Rosa looked away to give him the dignity of that moment. "What was the name in her phone?" he asked quietly. "I only saw it once," Rosa said. "It was saved as Derek M." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Derek Malone. He works in my legal department." He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. The hollow kind, the kind that's the opposite of funny. "He's been on my payroll for 4 years. Rosa didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. "I need to make a phone call," Ethan said. He set the sunflowers down on the counter, carefully, like they were somehow fragile now. "Rosa, thank you. I mean that. Have you ever had to tell someone a truth that you knew was going to hurt them? How did that feel?" He walked out of the kitchen. Rosa heard his footsteps go up the stairs. Steady, slow, a man preparing himself for something difficult. Lily looked up at her mother. "Did we do the right thing, Mama?" Rosa pulled her daughter close and held her tight. "Yeah, baby," she whispered. "We did the right thing." What happened next, over the following 3 hours, would change every single life in that house, including Rosa's, in a way she never saw coming. The truth came out fully that evening, and what Ethan discovered wasn't just a betrayal. It was something much bigger, something that should have destroyed him, but instead revealed something remarkable. Vanessa came home at 6. She walked in through the front door with shopping bags and a practiced smile, calling out Ethan's name with the easy confidence of a woman who believed she was perfectly safe. Rosa was finishing up in the downstairs sitting room, and she heard it all. The sound of Vanessa's heels on the marble, the rustle of bags being set down, the casual, "Hey, you're back early." And then Ethan's voice. Quiet, measured, completely controlled. "I need to show you something." He had spent the hours while Vanessa was gone doing what he did best, gathering information. He'd pulled phone records, spoken to 2 people he trusted at his company, and had a conversation with Derek Malone that lasted 8 minutes and ended in Derek's resignation. He'd done it all with the focused, methodical precision of a man who had built a billion-dollar company from scratch, because that was how Ethan Harmon processed pain. He turned it into action before he let himself feel it. What he showed Vanessa was a printed email thread between her and Derek, going back 9 months, 1 month after she and Ethan had started dating. The emails were many things, but the most significant line, the one that made Rosa's breath catch when Ethan later told her about it, was this: "Once I'm legally his wife, we get half in the divorce. That's the plan. That's always been the plan." It hadn't been love. It hadn't been a mistake or a moment of weakness or a complicated situation. It had been a strategy. Vanessa had been sent, by whom exactly was still unfolding, to get close to Ethan, marry him, and walk away with half his estate in a divorce settlement. Derek, from inside the legal team, would manage the paperwork and ensure the outcome. Ethan didn't yell. Rosa had expected yelling. She stood in the hall prepared for the kind of explosion that shakes walls. But there was no explosion. There was just Vanessa's voice, sharp and defensive at first, then cracking, then collapsing into something that sounded less like remorse and more like a woman realizing her plan had failed. She was gone within the hour. Her things, Ethan told her, would be sent. He called his attorney. He called his head of security. He sat in his study until 9 o'clock with the door closed. Rosa was about to gather Lily and head home when she heard him call her name from down the hall. She found him at his desk, jacket off, looking like a man who had aged quietly in the past few hours. The sunflowers were on his desk now in a glass of water. She noticed that he'd put them in water despite everything. "Sit down," he said. "Please." She sat across from him, Lily asleep on her shoulder. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the last 2 weeks. About the fact that you knew something that could have cost you everything. Your job, your stability, Lily's security. And you held it. Not out of dishonesty. Out of fear of consequences that you didn't deserve to be afraid of." He paused. "And then you told me anyway. Because you're a person of integrity." Rosa didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. "I want to offer you something," Ethan said. "Not as a thank you. I don't think integrity should be rewarded like it's unusual. I think it should just be honored." He slid a folder across the desk. "I have a house in Everythin. A small one, 3 bedrooms, good school district. It's been sitting empty. I'd like you and Lily to have it. Not as charity. As a correction. Because good people shouldn't be 1 car repair away from crisis." Rosa stared at the folder. "What would you do if someone offered you something that large out of genuine, uncalculated gratitude?" "I can't," she started. "You can," Ethan said simply. "You already did the hard part." Lily stirred on her shoulder and opened her eyes. She looked at Ethan with sleepy, unfocused eyes. "Hi, Mr. Ethan," she murmured. "Hi, little bug," he said. And this time when he smiled, it reached his eyes. What happened in the months after that night proved something that most people are afraid to believe. That integrity, even when it costs you everything, has a way of coming back around. Spring came slowly to Chicago that year, the way it always does. A little reluctant, a little cold, taking its time. But by May, the trees along the street in Evanston where Rosa and Lily now lived were fully green, and Lily had made 3 friends in the neighborhood, and Rosa had started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. She still worked. She wanted to work. She'd told Ethan that clearly, and he had respected it without argument. But the nature of her work had shifted in a quiet, gradual way. Ethan's estate needed a house manager, not just a cleaner. Someone who could coordinate vendors, manage schedules, oversee the small team of staff he'd brought on as his company expanded. He'd offered Rosa the position with a salary that made her blink 3 times before believing it. She'd earned it, he said. Not because of what she'd told him. Because of 2 years of being exactly who she was, every single day, in a house where no one was watching. Rosa had thought about that for a long time. There's a particular kind of integrity that happens when no one is looking. When there's no reward coming, no audience, no recognition. When you just do things right because you know the difference between right and wrong, even when it's quiet and exhausting and thankless. Rosa had been living that kind of integrity her whole adult life. For Lily, for herself, because her mother had raised her in San Antonio with nothing but values and the belief that a person's character is what they do when they're invisible. She'd been invisible in that house for 2 years. And then, in one small moment, she'd been seen. Ethan, for his part, went through something in those months that changed him in ways his business colleagues noticed before they understood. He became less closed. Less armored in the way that very successful, very burned people become armored. He laughed more easily. He was more present. He had come as close as a person can come to handing his life and his fortune to someone who had never cared about him. And the nearness of that disaster had done something clarifying. He stopped taking the good things for granted. By July, he had started joining Rosa and Lily for dinner occasionally. Not as employer and employee, but as something that didn't have a clean title yet. Just people who had been through something together and come out the other side with a quiet trust that felt like something worth protecting. Lily thought Ethan was the funniest adult she'd ever met. She told him this regularly and without irony, and he received this information each time like it was the best news he'd heard all week. Rosa watched this unfold with the careful, measured heart of a woman who had been hurt before and knew better than to rush. But she also knew how to recognize something real. She had, after all, recognized a lie in that hallway 2 years ago when most people would have looked away. Recognizing the truth was no harder. By October, something had quietly, gently begun between them, built not on glamour or strategy or the performance of love, but on the kind of foundation that only forms when 2 people have already seen each other at the worst and most honest moments. When trust is not assumed but earned, carefully, over time, over small moments and kept promises, and a little girl who still put her hand on a sad man's knee because she didn't know any other way to be. On a Sunday afternoon in late autumn, Lily sat between them on the porch of the Everythin house, eating a peanut butter sandwich and pointing at a squirrel in the yard with great urgency. Ethan was laughing. Rosa was smiling at the side of his face. The light was golden and sideways and warm. It was by every measure a small, ordinary moment. It was also, somehow, everything. There's a lesson in this story that I keep coming back to. It's not about money. It's not about luck. It's about a woman who cleaned someone else's house with dignity every single day, who raised a daughter to be fearless and honest, who told the truth at the moment it cost her the most, and who discovered that the most powerful thing in any room, in any life, in any story, is simply this: being exactly who you are, even when no one is watching. The little girl who was told to keep her mouth shut, didn't. And everything changed because of it. Integrity is not a strategy. It's not something you turn on when the stakes are high. It's just the quiet, daily choice to be the same person in every room. Seen or unseen, rich or struggling, powerful or invisible. Rosa was never invisible. She just hadn't been looked at yet. If this story moved you, touched something in you, or reminded you of someone you know, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people find stories like this one. And if you're new here, subscribe, because we tell these kinds of stories every single week and I would love for you to be part of this community. Drop a comment below and tell me, what part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it Rosa's silence? Lily's honesty? Or the moment Ethan put those sunflowers in water despite everything? I read every single comment. And share this with someone today who needs to be reminded that good people don't finish last. They just sometimes finish quietly.